next season in 2025, we are going to eliminate the original structure of the 12-team playoff where the top four seeds and those buys that are attached to those top four seeds are going to go to only conference champions. So remember, it was going to be the highest ranked conference champions, the four of them, get the buys. But what that led to, if you remember, is a really wonky seeding process where Boise was able to get a bye and Clemson got in there because they won the ACC but didn't get a bye, and it was just kind of funky. We all knew that. Oregon, which was the number one seed, the undefeated team that won the Big Ten championship, really got a bum draw, having to, while getting a bye, have to play Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. And Ohio State clearly was better than what their seed was because they were artificially pushed down because of those four buys that got pushed up. So what have they proposed? They've proposed a straight seeding model where we don't award those buys and those seeds based on conference championships, but on straight seeding by the committee. So this is what we would have had last season if we would have had the straight seeding based on the rankings, 1 through 12. What are we going to get? And this is what we would have got. Number one still would have been Oregon. Number two still would have been Georgia. Remember, they won the Big Ten and the SEC respectively. Now, what is different about this is basically everything else, because rather than buys going to conference champs at the 3 seed and the 4 seed, then in this straight seeding process, Texas, which lost to Georgia, would still get a bye, and Penn State, which lost to Oregon, would still get a bye as the 3 and 4 seeds. You would have that Boise, Indiana game at the 8-9. Notre Dame would have hosted Clemson in the first round. Ohio State would have hosted Arizona State. And then I think the biggest difference of all is Tennessee wouldn't have had to go to Columbus and play in the shoe. They would have gotten to host SMU. So those were the matchups that we would have gotten if we would have had the proposed model last season in 2024. Now, I think it's pretty obvious what the problems are in this model, which is why they built it the original way. And I understand what they're trying to fix, because last year it didn't go, I didn't think, great. And in particular for a team that was the best team in the regular season. Oregon goes undefeated through a Big Ten schedule, wins the Big Ten championship, is the number one seed overall, and then they got arguably the toughest quarterfinal draw. We want to avoid that. I would certainly agree with that. However, it's really tough when you're when you're awarding 4 buys and those top 4 seeds. The obvious problem with the graphic that you see right over there is that Penn State and Texas, they wouldn't have been penalized at all for losing the SEC and Big Ten championship game. Well, that's obviously a problem because they're the winners of those games, Oregon and Georgia, aren't gaining a real advantage. Maybe you could say the seed that they're getting is going to be better because their potential matchup in that quarterfinal round is better. Okay, you can maybe make that argument. But really, what is the incentive of winning and playing hard in that game now? What they have done for this season in 2025 by going to a straight seeding model is that they have devalued the conference championship games, in particular in the 2 best conferences in the country, where our last 2 national championships have come from, the Big Ten, where all the previous national championships have come from over the last 10 years, the SEC, these 2 conferences, which continue to get better and better and better and house the best teams in the country. Now you've devalued the conference championship game. None of us like that. So while the seeding might be better for this season and moving forward, I certainly don't like the thought of devaluing a game that I think should be very important and should have some real meaning and consequence for the winner and the loser. Now, what I would rather see is them say, we're not going to play a straight bracket. And once we seed them, now we're going to play a straight seeding tournament rather than a bracket tournament. Now, what does that mean, Joel? And probably there's better ways to describe that. But what that would mean would be that we're going to play the first round. So all those 4 games, we're going to play those games. And then the matchups for the second round are going to be determined based on who won those games, not just the bracket and who plays who. So you can't really even scout a team. What you would say is the lowest remaining seed, Oregon gets to play them. That would be a way to incentivize those teams to play hard in those championship games if you're going to seed them this way in a straight 1 through 12 model. It's pretty, I don't want to say it's an absolute, but it's really possible, I would say likely, that our top 4 seeds even this year are going to be the 4 teams that participate in the Big Ten and the SEC championship game. With both of those leagues going away from divisions, and you're going to just take the best 2 teams from each of those leagues and put them against each other, those are going to be the top 4 teams in the country. Let's be very honest. Now, the only caveat to that being, like, we'll see what Notre Dame does. We'll see this year what Clemson does. But that's the proposal for this year. And again, do I like it? No, I don't like it. We have to retain the value of the regular season. We have to retain the value and the importance of the conference championship game. And this doesn't do that. I think a small tweak to try to retain that importance would be play a straight seeding model throughout the playoffs rather than a bracket style tournament where this matchup feeds into that matchup and so on and so forth. So that's 2025, okay? Let's not take away the value of those championship games. I think what's more interesting is to look forward, because what they're talking about in 2026 and beyond is something totally different, and a model that in all likelihood is going to grow. It'll go to at least 14. And now what the news is what you're reading about out there, if you're interested in college football, is that it is likely to go possibly to 16 teams. Now, as soon as I hear 14 and 16, I immediately don't like the thought of a 16-team playoff. For the reason that I want to make sure we retain importance of the regular season and we have an access-based model and what I would say not a rankings-based model. I want to minimize the importance of the committee as much as we possibly can. The more that we can get college football out of that boardroom with those 13 people, the better for all of us. Okay, so I would rather have an access-based model. I would rather have an award for the teams that are the best teams in the regular season by giving them a bye. You do that in a 14-team model because you only have 2 byes. I didn't think that was the case with a 16-team model, but let's get into what they're actually proposing, because I think it's fascinating, to be honest with you, and it does retain some of that, and they want to try to, quote unquote, grow the pie. There's a push to go to 16 instead of 14. The major reason that they would want to push to go to 16 and not 14 is a safety net. And I'll get to that term safety net. Just keep it kind of stored away for right now, and we'll get to that here later in the show. Let's get to exactly what it would look like. So the 16-team college football playoff format would go as follows. We'd be pushing for automatic qualifiers. That's the entire reason to grow, is that the Big Ten and the SEC want automatic qualifiers. And I would say the Big Ten probably more so than the SEC, but certainly both of them would benefit from this. And they want automatic qualifiers, and they want 4 of them. Okay, and we're going to tell you why that 4 number is important in a little bit. Now, the model then differs from there because you can build the 16-team playoff in a couple of different ways after you get the 4 automatic qualifiers from the Big Ten and the SEC. On one format, you could go 3 automatic qualifiers from each the ACC and the Big 12. Then you would have 1 group of 5 member, and then you would have 1, quote, at-large spot for either Notre Dame or an at-large team, depending on where Notre Dame fell in the rankings. So that's one way to get to 16. Another way to get to 16, and this is the model that most of them are proposing, is a model where you would still retain those 4 automatic qualifiers for each of the big power conferences, the SEC and the Big 10. Then the ACC and the Big 12, which are not quite as powerful, would get 2 automatic qualifiers. And then the group of 5 would get theirs, and that would bring you to the last 3 spots, which would all be at large, including Notre Dame. So you kind of see what these conferences are getting at. The SEC and the Big Ten are saying, we want 4 automatic qualifiers, but then, hey, you know what? We're going to get a little bit greedy, and we're going to try to open up more access so that's not just 4, but maybe we could get a 5th. Maybe we could get a 6th team in the college football playoff. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.